Alrighty guys, welcome back to another video. Sorry for the view, I'm just sitting in my car. We're going over part 2 of the importance of unnoticed people in the Bible, or people that the average reader of Christianity reads over. Today we're going to be going over 3 important characters, the first one of which is called Esther. Now Esther, a lot of people don't actually know about because it's one of the only 2 books of the Bible that were actually written or about women. So the first chapter I wanted to read about Esther is chapter 2, right? So for those of you who don't know, Artaxerxes, or Ahasuerus, however you want to say his name, those were the 2 ones he was known by. You know, he offered his queen something and she refused. So he has to choose a new queen, and we're going to see what happens. After these things, when the anger of the king Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's young men who attended him said, "Let beautiful young virgins be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem in Susa, the citadel, under custody of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetics be given them, and let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti." This pleased the king, and he did so. Now there was a Jew in Susa, the citadel, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjamite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem among the captives carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, the daughter of his uncle, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. And when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So when the king's order and his edict were proclaimed, and when many young women were gathered in Susa, the citadel, in custody of Hegai, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of Hegai, who had charge of the women. And the young woman pleased him and won his favor, and he quickly provided her with cosmetics and her portion of food, and with 7 chosen young women from the king's palace, and advanced her and her young women to the best place in the harem. So here we see one of 2 things, right? Vashti displeased the king, and he picks a new one. That new queen is a Jew named Esther, who was the daughter, the niece of Mordecai. So second, we're going to see how the story unfolds and why Esther is so important. Let's take a look at chapter 3. It says, "After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, and advanced him and set his throne above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and paid homage to Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were at the king's gate said to Mordecai, 'Why do you transgress the king's command?' And when they spoke to him day after day, and he would not listen to them, they told Haman, in order to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage to him, Haman was filled with fury. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone. So as they had made known to him the people of Mordecai, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. In the first month, which is known as the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast that is, they cast lots before Haman day after day, and they cast it month after month till the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, 'There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws. So that it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. If it please the king, let it be decreed that they shall be destroyed. I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charged the king's business, that they may put it into the king's treasuries.' So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman the Agagite, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews." So here we see now that Haman creates a plot, right? Because people wouldn't bow down to him, he gets angry and decides to kill all of them. He makes it the king's decree, though, so now it looks like the king's about to kill everybody. He was provided money, and the king actually later refuses the money. So what happens then is Mordecai discovers the plot, right? And what happens is they have a banquet. And this is the reason why Esther is so important. Because when the plot gets brought to her, Mordecai pleads to Esther in order to stand before the king without being summoned. It's a level of faith and courage that really sets her apart in the Bible, because it was custom back then that you could not go before a king by yourself without being summoned by the said king. She risked her life and even death by going before him with nothing. We're going to see what happens here. While we were yet talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried to bring Haman to the feast that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman went into the feast with Queen Esther. And on the second day, as they were drinking wine after the feast, the king again said to Esther, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you, and what is your request? Even to the half of my kingdom it shall be fulfilled." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent. For our affliction is not to be compared with the loss to the king." Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, "Who is he, and where is he who has dared to do this?" And Esther said, "A foe, an enemy, this wicked Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking, and went into the palace garden. But Haman stayed to beg for his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king. And the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, as Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. And the king said, "Will he even assault the queen in my presence in my own house?" As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, "Moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose words saved the king, is standing in Haman's house 50 cubits high." And the king said, "Hang him on that." So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king abated. We see the importance of Esther here, yet a lot of people look over two very important characters. One of those characters is Mordecai. Mordecai was one of the ones who was able to discover the plot to begin with. He was faithful to God, and he wouldn't bow to anybody else besides God. So his faith and him standing on it was completely necessary for the story to unfold. The second person is the king. The king has all the power in the world. Oftentimes we don't understand this. The king could have easily heard Esther speak and still killed all the people. He chose to honor his wife and his commitment to the queen in order to save her people. He could see that it distressed her, and he relented of the action, even though he didn't tell her that it was by his decree that the people were about to be killed. Haman did it right, and a lot of people don't realize that. He went to the king and got the king's permission to carry it out. It's only when the king changed his mind and discovered the real intention behind the action that we see the king relents of this action and decides it's not for his embetterment, and that it would have benefited Haman, and that Haman was just mad that people weren't bowing to him because of the power that he was seeking. This is why it's important to read about all the characters of the story. Without Mordecai going to Esther, the Jews would be dead. They would have died. So it's really important to read about all the characters and what roles they had. God uses anybody and can use anybody despite their history, their race, no matter who they are. God could always use you if you're willing to serve. Have a good day.